Hi guys, thank you for joining us today. And if you have been following us in this channel, well, middle-aged guy is almost 1 year old. And during that time, we have accumulated a fair bit amount of video files and other important document files that we are using in this channel. And as storage space is not unlimited, I need to find a way to be able to securely back up all those important files and videos because right now it's already taking its toll and storage space on our PC that we are using right over here. One solution that we can do is to add additional internal drives in our PC right here, or maybe use some additional external hard drives, which we are already actually doing right now. But then again, using that solution, actually if I need to access any of those files or videos, I need to either physically be able to access this PC right here or carry around all of those external hard drives for me to have access to those files and documents. Which means I am either tied down to be able to only work in this specific space or physically carry around all those external hard drives when I am traveling. But on the off chance that I might have an accident and actually lose all those external hard drives by either physically losing the external hard drives or getting those files corrupted if I accidentally drop the external hard drives either in water if I'm on the beach or any other places where an accident might happen. And that got me thinking on how we can actually safely save all those important files, document, photos, and also have that capability for me or maybe someone that I assign be able to access all those files remotely without physically being here or carrying around external hard drives. That's where the product that we are unboxing and reviewing today in this channel comes in. Our friends from Asustor actually sent us this DriveStore 2 Lite, the AS1102TL from Asustor. This is a 2-bay NAS for us to unbox and review in this channel. NAS, which stands for Network Access Storage, actually is a device where it allows us to be able to save all our files securely with different kinds of configuration, and we can also do a redundancy or a mirrored type of configuration where we have a backup of our backup files. And we can securely access all these files not only physically here in our PC or in our network, our local area network, but even remotely. So even if I am abroad or even if I am somewhere around a beach or something, I can access securely all our files, videos, and photos, and other documents. So in today's video, we will be discussing about the benefits of using NAS and what other things that we can do with our NAS and what drives or hard disks that we need to use in our NAS. And of course, setting up our NAS and showing you guys on how we can access those files and documents remotely. Most of the things that we will be discussing here today about NAS will be generic across different types or brands of NAS. The only thing that will be specific is of course on how we can install our drives, which sometimes it may be similar to other brands, and of course setting up the environment for our NAS that would be specific to your brand of NAS. So why don't we go ahead and see what is inside our NAS drive right over here. So this is the Asustor DriveStore 2 Lite, the AS1102TL, which has a quad-core ARM CPU, 3.2 Gen 1 USB, Gigabit Ethernet, it is ultra quiet, and it has 3 years of warranty. And it is a toolless installation NAS. So this is the DriveStore 2 Lite, the little NAS that can. So let's open up the box. Let's see what's inside this NAS. Okay, so we have our NAS right here. Let's just put this on one side first. Okay, and we have, I think these are some of the other peripherals or equipments. So let's put away the box one side. And let's open this small box first, this brown box. So here, yep, we have the power supply and the power cable, and we have, this is the Ethernet cable, it's good, and some screws that we need for screwing in the hard drives, and the quick menu guide right here. So let's put this ahead on one side. And let's go ahead and open up this NAS. Okay, so that's good that it is being protected. So even during delivery, it should not have any problems. So remember, this is a small computer. So you have your CPU and your RAM inside it. This one has 1 GB of RAM installed inside, and it is not actually expandable. So we cannot upgrade the RAM for faster processing even if we wanted to. So one thing to take note of if you want to get this NAS storage. So the NAS itself, it's quite light, and let's go ahead and remove this protector over here. So it looks like all around. So in the front, we have the LED lights for status over here. I'm not sure what is this one. Then we have a USB port in the front, our screws at the back to remove the cover, our Ethernet port, another USB, and a power supply. And I think on the top right is the power button. As you saw in our unboxing, the DriveStor 2 Lite is actually a 2-bay NAS, meaning for this to work, we need to have 2 hard disk drives installed in our NAS. But before that, we need to know what type of NAS or what kind of NAS that we can use in our NAS drive. So the DriveStor 2 Lite can actually accommodate up to 22 terabytes of hard disk drive, which is in the 3.5-inch size hard disk with a SATA connection. As you know, there are hard disk drives that are 2.5, the smaller one, so that one will not be able to work on our NAS drive that we have right over here. So make sure that if you're using this NAS, you have the 3.5-inch drive with a SATA connection. Another thing that we need to take note of is that what kind of hard drive or hard disk that we can use in our NAS. Actually, there is a special type of hard drive that is specifically designed for NAS usage, and that is the one that we are going to use in our NAS drive right now. So why is it recommended to use that specifically made NAS storage, or what they call NAS hard drive, in our NAS instead of a regular hard drive? Well, there are 2 things that we need to consider when we are using the NAS drive. One is that the NAS drive typically runs 24/7, unlike our PC that we only use when needed. The second is that hard drives inside the NAS drive actually sits closely together, and as you know, hard drives has spinning spindle in order for them to read or write in the disk drives, and those 2 hard drives that are sitting together closely creates vibration and heat between themselves, and that will have an effect on the hard drives themselves in the long run. But of course, in the end, it will still be up to you on what kind of hard drive that you want to use. Either use the normal type of hard drive or the NAS specific hard drive. Another thing to consider when buying hard drives for our NAS is that it is actually recommended to use 2 hard drives with the same brand, with the same classification, with the same speed, with the same rating, with the same storage size. For example, in our hard drive, if we want to use 2 terabytes of NAS hard drive, then we need to use 2 terabytes hard drive for our NAS drive that we have right over here. That is because we want to make sure the compatibility of both hard drives, because they will be running together in tandem to make sure that all our files are secured and safe. So in our setup, we're going to use this 2 10 terabytes hard drive from Western Digital. This is the WD Red Plus NAS hard drive. Yes, these are specific and made to be used for NAS drives, and we are not using the regular hard drives for our NAS that we have right over here. So these are 2 3.5-inch hard drives, and they have the same capacity, 10 terabytes, and they have the same speed and same rating. Theoretically, you can actually use 2 different sizes for hard drives. For example, you have 1 10 terabyte and 1 8 terabytes hard drive to be used in your hard drive. That is actually perfectly fine. But take note that if you are using the mirrored configuration, which we will discuss later on, that you will only see the lower capacity of the hard drives available for you to use. So for example, you have an 8 and a 10, you will only see an 8 terabytes of free space in your NAS drive. And another thing that I want you to take note of is that you don't actually need to start off with 2 hard drives. Okay, so if there are some budget constraints, actually you can start off and use 1 hard drive first, and later on upgrade your configuration when you have the budget for the second hard drive to be used on your NAS. So now that we have our NAS drive and we have our NAS hard disks for us to use in our NAS drive, and now the thing that we need to discuss is what kind of configuration are we going to use in our NAS drive. So typically for a 2-bay NAS drive, meaning that we can have at most 2 hard disk drives inside the NAS, we have 2 options on configurations on our storage space. One is that we can have a bulk continuous storage space. So for example, we have 2 10 terabytes of hard disk drives here. So for that configuration, we'll be able to use the whole 20 terabytes of space for our consumption for files and documents and videos. And in that configuration, the thing that we need to take note of is that once there is a problem with one of your hard disk drives, for example, one fails for whatever reason, that any document in that failed hard disk drive is actually lost. Now, there is a second configuration that we can use in our NAS drive, which is called actually a mirrored configuration, meaning that whatever is saved on one of our hard disk drives, it's actually saved on the second hard disk drive. And actually, in this configuration, for example, we have 2 10 terabytes, you can actually only use 10 terabytes of storage space because, as we said, it is mirrored. So it means that all the files are doubled in our setup for this NAS drive. So the benefit of this configuration is that actually, if one of the drives fail, you can actually just replace that broken hard disk drive with another hard disk drive. Of course, recommendation is the same size and with the same brand and speed of hard disk drive. Then when that happens, you just replace it with a new drive. All those files that are on your good hard drive will be copied over on your new hard disk drive that you have installed, and you have that what they call redundancy in your setup, meaning that you have a lower chance of losing all those important files and documents because all your files are duplicated in 2 drives instead of just 1. And for most people, actually that is one of the main reasons why they are using NAS drives, in order for them to securely back up all their files, making sure that they have redundancy on all their files so that in case there might be an accident happening on one of the drives, they don't need to lose all those important files that are saved on their NAS drives. So for both configuration, actually I am just trying to explain it as simple as possible so that any one of us here watching this video can understand the configurations plainly. But for technical purposes, actually the one where we are going to use the 2 hard disk drives as a continuous drive, meaning we can use the whole 20 terabytes of hard disk storage space, that configuration is called RAID 0. And if you are configuring it as a mirrored or with a redundancy, meaning that we can only use 10 terabytes of the 2 10 terabytes because we are mirroring all the data in one hard drive to another, that configuration is called RAID 1. And of course, there are other different types of configurations under RAID. There's also RAID 5 and RAID 10, but that is not applicable in our case because we are only using a 2-bay NAS drive, and RAID 5 and RAID 10 actually need to have at least 3 or 4 hard disk drives in order for them to be configured as RAID 5 or RAID 10. Okay, so I know that there's a lot of information to digest, so that's why we have done this video so that you can fast forward or go back to any section that you need some explanation to with regarding NAS. So feel free to skip, feel free to rewind if you need to go back on some of the parts in this video. So now let's go ahead and install our hard disks on our NAS drive. Okay, so now we'll be installing our hard disk drives into our NAS. So we have the screws over here. Even though it says it's toolless, I think it's still better to just have your tools ready. So it was a bit hard to remove this, so having a screwdriver there really helped a lot. So once we remove these 2 screws, then our cover is free to be removed. Wait, let's see. Okay, careful. Okay, that's it. So this is how our NAS looks like inside. So we have our two trays for the hard disk drives over here. We have the fan at the back, and the CPU and the RAM is on that PCB board that you can see behind the green colored PCB. So we have here our two hard disk drives, two 10 terabytes Red Plus from Western Digital that we will install here. So what we just need to do is to align the SATA connections to our base here. So just need to be careful and align that to the base so that we can push this in. It's a bit hard. Try. Oh, why is it not pushing in? Need to be careful. Okay, there we go. Oops. One more try. Okay. So yep, once you have aligned it, you just push it in so that it will have contact to the SATA connections over here, and then we can install our second drive on top of the other. So as I mentioned, these drives is very close to each other, and that's why it's recommended to have to use NAS storage than regular storage, because the vibration and the heat dissipated from these two hard disk drives will shorten the lifespan of your hard disks. So just screw the hard disk drives into the slots like we have over here. So there are a total of 4 screws on each side, so 2 for each side for each hard disk drive. So a total of 8 screws that we need to screw in to secure our hard disk drives. Okay, again, they mentioned that this is can be used as toolless, but I find it much more easier to install all these hard drives here using my screwdriver rather than doing it by hand. See how small the screwdrivers are and how big my fingers are. So yep, having a magnetic screwdriver really helps out a lot. Okay, so now that we have secured our 2 hard disk drives, this is what it will look like. Now it's significantly much more heavier than previously before. So afterwards, we can safely install back the cover carefully, align it so that we can install it properly. Okay, once that is aligned, we can turn this on its back so that we can screw. Oops. Okay, I don't think we can do that. It's falling out. Okay, let's just screw this while being on its side. So we have 2 screws, one on the top middle and the bottom middle. So let's just screw this in. Okay, and yep, just securing it. Okay, then that's it. Now we have our Asustor Drive Store 2 with the 2 10 terabytes hard drive ready to be powered up. So now that we have installed our 2 hard disk drives on our NAS, this is what our NAS looks like right now. So as you can see, it's quite small. So see from my hands, but it's actually heavy. Not because of the NAS itself, but because of the 2 3.5 hard disk drives, which puts on a bit of weight in our NAS drive. So now what we need to do is to be able to decide where to put our NAS, because our NAS only supports Ethernet cables. So actually it needs to sit somewhere near our router so that we can have the cable run through and connect to this NAS, and a place where it can be powered on 24/7. So for our setup right here in our place, actually the router is sitting outside of this room, and because I wanted to place our NAS near our PC right here, I needed to run a CAT or a Ethernet cable all the way from our router outside to our setup right here. So another thing to take note of is that our NAS drive can support gigabit Ethernet cable, so it means it can support up to 1000 gigabit per second of data transfer. So the cable that you might want to use here is your gigabit Ethernet LAN cable, because there are another type of LAN cable, which is the 10100 Mbps Ethernet cable. So that one will be a lower spec than what we have here. But then again, if your router doesn't support gigabit transfer, then you will not be able to maximize the gigabit transfer capability of your NAS drive right over here. So before we go ahead and install this and turn it on for the very first time, one of your question might be is this NAS drive only able to do a backup of files? Does it mean that it's just a glorified external enclosure per se that I can access locally and remotely? Well, technically no. The NAS drive in itself is actually a small computer, and you can actually install applications in this computer for you to use it and run different kinds of tasks. One of the things that are usually done with a NAS drive is that it is being used as well as a home server. So you can either do a streaming server where you can stream on your local area network all your homemade videos and all of those things. And another thing is that you can also use this NAS drive as a web server. So if you want to host your own website, you can actually use the NAS drive. It has the capability to host all your website and publish it on the internet. But of course, there are a lot of other things that you need to take note of, like buying your website name and setting up your DNS and all of those things to run the web server properly. So now join me as we turn on this NAS drive for the very first time. So hopefully I did not mess anything up. As you saw in the installation of the hard drives, it's quite easy and simple to install the hard drive. So I don't think there will be any problems, but let's go ahead and power up this NAS drive and see what we got. Okay, so what we have here is actually our UPS. Our UPS is right here, and I'll be placing our NAS drive over here, and this is our Ethernet switch. So this one will be the one that will be connecting to our NAS drive right here. And I have also set up the power cable for our NAS drive. Let me get onto it right over here. Okay, so what we just need to do is plug in our power and our Ethernet cable at the back of our drive. To show you, here it is. So our power and our drive. We know that we are getting power because our Ethernet port is actually blinking already. So it's trying to get connection over there. So now I'll just need to place this properly here. Let me just do that. Okay. Just put this over on top over here. Okay, so maybe we'll just find a more better position for it in the future, but for now, let's use this one. So pressing the power button at the back, so we'll see if this one will work. Hopefully it does. Keep your eye on the LED lights over here. Okay, at least that looks promising. So we have our power light on. Our drives is actually reading. Oh no, that one is for processing. The disk is the last one. And Ethernet is actually working as well. So looks like everything is a-okay for our drive. So now let's go ahead and move this to our PC so that we can try to access our drive and set up all our hard disk itself and the configuration. So for this one, we will do it as a configuration for RAID 1. So we'll have a redundancy and a backup of our backup for this NAS drive. So let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is to go to asustor.com And once there, we need to go to support and then on downloads. On this downloads folder, we need to select our model. We have the Asustor Lite, so we're choosing the Asustor Lite. And from here, we can either install and download our control center for Windows or Mac, depending on your computer that you're going to use this on. So once that one is downloaded, you just need to extract and install this application. So this is just a normal installation, so just follow the instructions and install the application. So once installed, it will ask you to allow this to access your network so that it can find your NAS drive. So just allow this. Once it is allowed, you can go ahead and do a scan for your Asustor drive. And if all goes well, you will have you will see the drive in the list below. So once you have this, it will open up a web page. So this is the ADM. So once the ADM started, it will give you a welcome message if you haven't initialized your NAS before. And it will just go through the process of initializing your ADM OS and your NAS drives. And a part of this, for the first time, it will ask you to update the NAS ADM application. So we download the new ADM file, and it will also start doing the partition and updating the system in the NAS drive itself. So once that's done, we just need to accept the terms and condition. So after accepting, first is the system initialization. Just choose whichever theme you want, and for this example, we will do a one-click setup. But if you're more technical, you can do a custom setup to manually configure each and everything in your NAS drive. But for this, we will be using the one-click setup. So once you press next, it will ask you for the name of your server, and either you want to do a RAID 0 or RAID 1. See here, maximum capacity. So we have two drives. So if it's maximum capacity, it's RAID 0 with 18 terabytes of storage. And if we do a balance, which is the RAID 1, means it will be a mirror image of each other. So if ever one drive fails, you can just replace that failed drive, and you will still have all your files intact. Then you will need to enter an account name for your admin and a password. Okay, so do take note of this, as you will need this in logging in on your ADM or your Asustor Data Manager. After that, everything is done. Confirm the checkbox on the lower left side and press the Start Initialization. So once everything is initialized, it will ask you to sign up and register your NAS in the website. So if you already have an Asustor account before, you can just use already have an Asustor ID to add this NAS on your account. But for me, this is my first NAS with Asustor, so I will create and register. So let's go ahead and skip after registration of this. Okay, so once you're done, you can start using your NAS. To show you this ADM interface that you will use in order for you to manage your NAS. So okay, so this one, before you begin, so Please make sure that you're secured by using a strong password, and to turn off terminal SSH and SFTP. And it's also asking us to change the system port. So these are the default system port. So let's just change this to another port depending on your choosing. So I'll change it to 9215, 9216 to make it more secure and not using the default one, so that anyone who might try to connect here and don't know the port will not be able to connect to our NAS drive. Okay, so once done, press OK. Then it will give you a tutorial on how to use this ADM. This guide is pretty intuitive, so it will ask you on how to add users, how to manage your files, reading and writing on files, and all of those things. So if it's the first time that you are going to use this, just go through ahead on all of these things, and it will also show you how you can enable remote access when you are not in your local area network. Then once you are done with the tutorial, then it means that your NAS is now set up. So once that's done, we can go ahead and map our NAS drive. So just remember our IP address earlier on. So make sure that our IP address is also set to a static IP address for our NAS so that it will not change every time. So that is recommended. So once you are ready, you just do all these things and add in the folder that we want to access. Okay, so it will ask us to choose. We need to choose a folder name. We cannot choose the just the IP address. So once you do home, then we can access that home and some other of the folders. So do take note that once this is set up, it will take some time for your NAS drive to be completely set up, but you can actually use it now. But do take note that depending on the size of your drives, so it may take some time to synchronize the drives depending on the configuration that you did. For mine, I actually did a RAID 1, so it took about 15 hours to make sure that everything is synchronized and everything is working smoothly. But even with that being configured in the background, I can still use and set up some of the other things that I want in my NAS drive. But then again, it is quite slow because it's doing that synchronization in our NAS. And that's it. Once you are done here, you are set up, and it's just up to you on what else you want to add on to your NAS drive depending on your need. If you want to enable the web server or do some other technical things on your NAS drive, then this ADM or this Asus Data Manager will be the one that will help you do all of those things for your NAS. So, is a NAS drive something that you might want to consider in the future for your setup? Well, if you have a lot of big files and important files like videos, photos that you want to save and have a backup and redundancy on those backup, meaning that you have a backup of that backup, then I think NAS is something that you might want to consider. Yes, there are some online cloud services that you can use like Google Cloud or Azure or AWS. Well, those are all paid services as well, and you either pay a monthly or a yearly subscription for a limited amount of storage that they would let you use depending on how much money that you buy. But if you have your own NAS drive like this Asustor DriveStor 2 Lite, actually you have more control and security on your files, meaning that you don't have anybody else accessing your files, knowing about your files, because of course if you upload it to Google, Google has access to those files. But if you have your own NAS drive, it means that you have more control on the files and the security of your files in your NAS drive. I would say that a NAS drive is not typically for everybody because of course you need to make sure that you are able to power it on 24/7, you have a good internet connection so that you can access it anywhere, anytime that you want to. But if you don't have those constraints, I think NAS drive is actually a good choice for those of you guys who want to securely back up all your files. And again, a NAS drive is not only used for saving files or backupping some of your files, but you can actually also use it as a web server, as a home server, as a video streaming server, and some other types of applications that you might want to check out in their application downloader in the ADM of this NAS drive. So everything that we have discussed here, again, it is generic and there are a lot of different types and brands of NAS. So Asustor is one of our recommended brands for your NAS drive needs. And of course, there are different types of NAS that Asustor also sells in their website. So the DriveStore 2 Lite is one of their more affordable, budget-friendly NAS, but they also have the non-lite version, and they also have the 4-bay NAS and the 8-bay NAS. They also have those different kinds of configuration on the processor and the RAM, where some of them, the RAM is also upgradable. So this one has a 1 GB of RAM, but some of their other types of NAS has a 2 GB of RAM, and some of them are also upgradable. So it depends on the budget that you have for your NAS drive setup. And those configurations, of course, will have an effect on all the applications that you are running in your NAS drive. So for example, you want to have a streaming service, you want to have those web server, those home server. So having a more powerful NAS drive, more powerful processor, more powerful RAM that is installed in the NAS drive means you have more resources in order to be able to host all of those applications in your NAS drive. So it doesn't mean that this NAS has the capability to install all those applications and run those applications, mean that you will have the benefit of all those applications running all together in your NAS. So you need to also consider your resources in the NAS. So 1 GB is a lot for RAM size, but of course, if you are planning to run multiple applications, all of those applications will occupy and use up resources on your NAS drive. So that is something to take note of. And another tip that I will leave with you guys is that even if you are starting out with NAS, so this is a personal opinion and recommendation from me, is that you might want to consider, of course this one is if your budget allows, is that you might want to consider investing on a 4-bay NAS instead of a 2-bay NAS. And as I said, you don't need to occupy all the bays in the NAS. You don't need to fill it up with all those hard drives to start. But having a 4-bay NAS instead of a 2-bay NAS gives you much more flexibility on how you want to expand your storage space in your NAS drives. And you have a little bit more different kinds of configuration that you can use there. You have the option to do a RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, RAID 10. So if you guys are interested in this Asustor DriveStore 2 Lite, the AS1102TL from Asustor, I will leave the link of this product in the description below. And for those of you guys who are already planning on getting your NAS and setting up your NAS, what do you guys plan to use your NAS for? Comment down in the comment section below. So again, thank you guys for joining us today, and I wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And for all of you guys who are subscribed to our channel, thank you so much for all your support. And if you are not one of them yet, maybe you want to subscribe to our channel, go ahead and click this button right here, and maybe watch one or more of our videos up here and up here. And I will see you all again next year. Bye!